Please do not trust the nonsense that ChatGPT spits out. That's a quote from Ed Freyfogle. He's the co-founder of Opencage. He posted that on Twitter, as well as a Slack group I'm part of, and made it to the top of Hacker News. He talks about how ChatGPT has been telling people that Opencage provides a service they don't, and even giving them code to hit their API to perform phone lookups. But the thing is, they've never offered this service. And so now they're getting dozens of angry signups per day, wondering why their API is broken. We all think ChatGPT is pretty amazing. In this video, we're gonna take a look at one of the downsides of AI. I'm Rob Walling, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've written 4 books on building startups, and I've invested in more than 125 companies. Opencage is a geocoding API, meaning you can put things into it like an address and get the latitude and longitude. You can put in latitude, longitude, get addresses back, and all manner of things in between. But a couple months ago, ChatGPT started recommending Opencage for a service they don't offer, this phone lookup service. And it's gotten so bad that they published a blog post called "Don't Believe ChatGPT, we do not offer a phone lookup service." So back in January, Opencage started receiving a few customers, a trickle in their sign-up flow in January, and the "how did you hear about us" was ChatGPT. And they thought, that's great. The problem was many of these new users were using their free trial for a handful of API requests, and then they would stop completely. And in fact, a lot of them started saying it didn't work or something was broken, which of course was very concerning for these founders. As they investigated, they realized ChatGPT is incorrectly recommending them for a reverse phone number lookup. In other words, the ability to determine the location of a mobile phone solely based on the number. So this is not a service that they provide, and it's not a service that you could really build, and this is incredibly privacy invasive. You would need to be a cell phone carrier in order to provide this data. So it's not something they can even take advantage of. One of the co-founders of Opencage is an investor in Tinyseed, and so he had posted in the Tinyseed Slack about this, and folks were chiming in with, well, you have this traffic now, shouldn't you just build this API endpoint? Not realizing the privacy implications and frankly the implausibility of building an API endpoint like this. And the crazy part is, it's not just that ChatGPT is recommending them for the service, but they are writing code to allow you to hit a non-existent API endpoint. It all looks very believable. You might be wondering, why would ChatGPT recommend Opencage if they don't have this API endpoint? Well, it turns out that there were some YouTube videos published over the past few years that referred to Opencage as being able to do it. And so obviously ChatGPT has pulled that false information into their brain. And when you ask about doing this reverse phone lookup, they're spitting out full API code for an API endpoint that doesn't exist. And an interesting thing that Opencage points out in their blog post, which at the bottom they note was written by a human, not by AI, is that we as humans and people on the internet have learned to become skeptical of advice given by other humans. So if you're watching a video course, you sometimes take it with a grain of salt. But we feel like searching Google, asking ChatGPT are going to give us these unequivocal, positive, and true results, and that's not the case. I think many of us have stumbled upon this while using ChatGPT. Another example that's interesting is I typed in, "tell me about Rob Walling." And the first summary that ChatGPT spit out was pretty much 100% accurate. It talks about me being an entrepreneur, an investor, an author. It talks about companies I've started, who acquired us. It talks about companies I've started, companies I've sold, as well as some of the books I've written. But when I click regenerate request, it gives information that is just incorrect. It says things like, he's an angel investor and has invested in several startups, including Baremetrics, User Input, and Tinyseed. I haven't invested in Baremetrics. I've never heard of User Input, and Tinyseed is a company I started. I didn't angel invest in it. In addition, in this same response, it says Rob Walling is also a prolific author. Talks about Start Small, Stay Small, which was my first book. And it says I wrote The Lean Entrepreneur, How to Build a Successful Business Using the Principles of Lean Development, which I'm pretty sure is a real book, but I didn't write it. By now, hopefully, most of us know that ChatGPT and frankly, all of the AI chat should be taken with a grain of salt. They have incorrect results, just like a Google search might have incorrect results. You might search for a recipe for an old fashioned, and maybe the 6th or the 7th row isn't actually an old fashioned. Maybe it's a different variation of it, or it's either a mistake or it's just a ranking that isn't exactly your query. And we're used to that with search, but we're not used to it with AI yet. So for those of us using it, the first thing you should do is take all AI generated content with a grain of salt. The second thing, and it's something that AI providers are starting to do, is to provide references for their data. And that's something that happens so well in the Googles of today, is when you search for it and you see a snippet or you see a summary of a web page, you see the URL right there. And that's the reference built in, right? If it's coming from CNN or the BBC, you can assume it's a reputable news source. If it's coming from news-of-the-day.biz, you're probably going to want to take that with a grain of salt. So that's a signal, right? It's a reference. And the more that AI can surface what they're referencing as they create this content, the better off all of us will be. So I certainly wish the best to the Opencage team. I know they've been struggling with people being angry, higher support load, negative reviews, and there's really no way to get around this. Who do you report this to? It's not like you can tell OpenAI to regenerate their whole corpus because they have a mistake in one of their results. So I definitely wish them the best as they try to clean up this mess, recover from it, and move on. We'll link up the tweet, the blog post, and the Hacker News post in the description of this video. If you enjoyed it, hope you hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. I talk all about SaaS, about building, growing, and launching, and about changing your life through entrepreneurship. Hope you'll join us this and every week. I'll see you in next week's video.